Welcome to the Black on Shelf podcast, a podcast championing Black and brown entrepreneurs on the digital and physical shelves. I'm your host, Tanaj Ferguson. This is Black on Shelf. All right, welcome back to Black on Shelf. We are here with Jasmin Foster of Be Rooted, your favorite inclusive stationery company. We're going to learn more about Jasmin, her background, where the brand is going, all the tea. So welcome to Black on Shelf, Jasmin.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to share. And yes, like you said, spill the tea.
Yes, for those watching, Jasmin looks beautiful. She's just bringing us professional girl magic, all that we look at when we see Be Rooted in the journals. It is giving us everything. So we're happy. Thank you for showing us face.
Oh my God, thank you so much for saying that. You've lifted my spirits. It's been a long day. So, at least, putting it together for this.
Together. We love that. So tell us more about you. You're founder, you're almost 3 years going on to building this brand, almost 3 years. What has that been like? And before we get into that, just tell us about your background. How did you get here? That's what we're trying to figure out.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, I was always that young girl who loved stationery, the person who got excited about decorating my locker, buying a new notebook. But I always felt like I was a bit disconnected from the category because when you saw someone on the products, that they never looked like me. And when they had language on them, it was cute, but it just was never the exact length that I was looking for. And that was something that's always been buried in the back of my head. So I went to college, decided to go the retail route, and was a buyer for many years at Target. I was a buyer at Amazon. And when I was at Target, most notably, one of my jobs was really building out that multicultural beauty segment. And so multicultural hair was definitely already still there and was thriving, but we really wanted to make sure that when Black and brown women could walk into Target, they could also buy their skincare, they could buy their cosmetics, they could buy their men's grooming products. And it was more than just about the hair. And while I was in that job, I really saw myself really looking at the store again and being what other areas are we not represented? And home was a category where I was there's not wall art that looks like wall art in my house. Again, there's not stationery that looks like stationery that I would want to have. And there's not decor. And so there's been these little pieces of my story going back from my childhood and then tying back into my career that made me really want to start a brand that was really centered on Black and brown women, to uplift us, to celebrate us, and to do it in product types that we carry with us in our everyday life.
Yeah, so we got to pause there because it's wait a minute. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Jasmin was one of the people at Target responsible for what you love seeing today. It wasn't an overnight thing. People like Jasmin, buyers, responsible for really creating that atmosphere we all love. So if those other Black women have followed Target While Black Girls at Target, these spaces that are really saying, oh my gosh, there's been an infusion of more inclusive products specifically for us. And you were a big part of that beauty set, which was one of the first areas in the store that really felt welcoming and that we felt super seen. And there was something to come to Target for outside of the amazing other stuff, but really there was something that was really speaking to us. What was that experience like while you were there, transforming the shelf and that category that spoke to so many of us?
Yeah, I mean, being a Black woman who's gone to Target or enter any other retailer and who's tried to find, makeup that didn't make me ashy, or try to find a new lip that didn't look beige, or, even sunscreen that went on my body that didn't turn, a white cast. I've had those challenges myself. And so I felt very uniquely positioned to being the right person to take the job. And it was such a cool experience. I got to meet so many dope Black and brown women and some men who were
Scotch
following
Porter,
their passions,
and
really going after this white space of beauty. And I mean, beauty is a commodity business in which people leverage this stuff every day. To think that Black women and men suffer from being able to find products that they would use in their everyday life, literally, so some people wear makeup every day, or some people use skincare every day, was crazy. And it was so fun to get to hear their stories. And I think like having that exposure to so many entrepreneurs over that like 3-year stint allowed for me to really kind of get that itch of like, like entrepreneurship, like what's this? Like, and maybe it's something that I would want to be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Black on Shelf is about. Like you had the opportunity to have a front row seat hearing these entrepreneurs pitch their multicultural beauty products to you to try to get on Target shelves, and for you to help them navigate, what are y'all looking for? What are we looking for as consumers when we come? And you being somewhat of a gatekeeper to that, you had that front row seat hearing their stories, and you saw kind of like, hey, seeing them inspired me in a lot of ways, right? You're like, I can do this too.
Yeah.
So that's
and
crazy.
That's the beauty of exposure. We talk a lot about being a Black entrepreneur and like what are some of the gatekeepers, and people always like to point to funding, but it's more than that. Like you just don't know what you don't know, and it's access to knowledge and exposure. And I think like the most beautiful thing for young kids growing up now is that they're exposed to so much, as they get to see so many pathways to success. I used to always say that I was the entrepreneur's best friend. Like, you got a question, I'm here to help you out. But I'm not taking that risk, right? But being exposed to more people really showed me that the pathway can look different, and it unlocks freedom. And so I know I just changed it, but the whole point there was that there's such a need for exposure for Black and brown people to different pathways.
There is. And that's exactly why this platform exists, because that same moment you had, or that same season of you being able to have that exposure, you already had the knowledge and the authority, right? You had that background that allowed you to come in that buyer role and assess product market fit and everything like that. So that knowledge was there, but then that exposure was the thing that really ignited your passion and brought out what likely was going to come out at some point, but probably really brought it to a head. So when you think about
myself a decade,
you probably saved yourself a decade, like real talk. So when you think about kind of sitting in the seat, being a buyer at Amazon, at Target, going on in sales at Urban Skin RX, talk to me about how, when you look at your background, does any of that, could you predict any of that? What were you wishing? What do you thought you were going to do before all that?
Oh gosh, no, I could not predict any of this. So when I was in undergrad, I was a marketing major, and I totally thought that, actually backing up in high school, I remember I was in this business club because, kind of nerdy. And my business teacher had the like marketing person from Nike come in and like talk to us about like advertising. And so in my head, I was going to college to be a marketer and like make commercials and move to New York and make like zero money and just like be in charge of all the cool commercials. Because back to exposure, I got exposed to this one person who worked for Nike, who showed us the cool commercials that he worked on. He had on like the coolest shoes. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. And then while I was in college, Target came to campus, and they're like, here's this world of retail. I had never really considered who made the decisions behind what showed up on my shelf. Like I just, being young and naive, just assumed stuff just got there, and it was just like predetermined by like God. I don't know, but I never thought that there was like people sitting in chairs that like determined what was on shelf. And not to mention that you could get paid for it, not to mention you could get paid like decently for it. But the downfall is you go live in Minneapolis, and where in the heck is Minneapolis? Like that, right? Like I had no clue. And so I had an opportunity to go intern there when I was a sophomore in college, and got exposed to retail and fell in love with it. How cool is it that you get to decide what gets put on shelf? And then leaving, I thought that, retail was all that was there for me. And I got exposed to working with small emerging brands that were being breakthrough and disruptors in their industry. And so that's what led me to go be head of sales and kind of grow a small emerging brand. And then I think the compilation of all those experiences really kind of just like continued to scratch the itch of me asking like, what's more out there for me? But no, I did not grow up thinking that this would be the path that I would be on.
Yeah. And shout out to Indiana University, because you know, they help you get that start and give you some of those exposure. I do love that you did get to meet head of Nike or someone at Nike in marketing, even the Target was coming to your school at that point in time. All of those really do create that exposure that not everybody has, but thankfully you had that exposure and it helped to really shape your path. In your journey, you also did a little bit of food at General Mills.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, talk to me about how that experience was different from some of your retail buyer type roles versus being on a brand role. If you were on a brand role, talk to me about some of the similarities and differences, because you as a marketer have had some various experiences too, different segments, categories.
Yeah, so how General Mills came about was I was at this point in my career where I was like, I could stay on this retail path. I love retail, but what else is out there? And from early on in life, I was told by my parents, like, you have to go get your MBA. Like, you need your MBA, you need your MBA, you need your MBA.
Yeah.
And when I thought about getting my MBA, I didn't know what I wanted to get it in, but I thought maybe consumer insights is where I wanted to get my MBA in. So I applied for a consumer insights job at General Mills because I was like, well, school costs this much, but maybe I can have someone pay me to like learn about consumer insights.
Yeah.
And then if I like it enough, maybe I will then go back and get my MBA there, because they had like a really great education program at General Mills. And it was very ambitious because most people kind of who work for big CPGs already have their MBA. So they come in without an MBA and think I'm going to get this role. But I got it. And it was an amazing experience of teaching me to be consumer first. Like all of their decisions are centered in being consumer first. And I was on the trends team. So it was my job to understand the trends about our consumer, understand the trends in the landscape, and then help all the brand teams come up with their new innovation that would eventually hit the marketplace. What I learned was that I did not like not being a decision maker. So even though I got to heavily influence what was going on, I never got to decide what product they actually decided to go with. And so I got my mini MBA at General Mills in Consumer Insights. Someone paid me to get it versus me paying the school to get it. And I learned that I didn't need that MBA in that. And so that was kind of where my stint there. But I've been able to leverage that thinking of understanding the category landscape and really understanding consumer first into all other roles that I've had after that.
Yeah, I love that you took that path too, because I do think it's an option for some people, particularly since you already had a business undergrad. So I had a psychology undergrad degree. And so, you know, working in nonprofit right after, I felt like my psychology degree totally prepared me in a lot of ways to think consumer first. That my research was on consumer behavior, it was on consumer eating behavior, but it was the same lens, right? To really think about what are they looking for, what's going on, and how can you use that to get a different action or behavior, or to optimize on that action or behavior that's already happening. You were able to kind of use your work experiences to get the experience, and that was your mini MBA. What advice would you give to folks who are like, I don't know if I want to do business. How can I kind of work first and see what it goes? You were able to do that. Talk about how can you leverage those experiences to actually answer that question, or to help you decide what your career path next might look like. Does it need education? Does it need a role? And how do you seek that out? What advice would you give to the boss fam?
Yeah, so I would say, like, you know, I was very lucky to get someone to bet on me without having the experience to give me the job, right? And I'm very realistic that may or may not happen for everyone, but there's other ways in which you can do it. So 2 other things that I've used in my past is, one, internships. Like, the internships are a great way to have a peek under the cover of, you know, is this something that you're interested in? Another thing, say you're like, girl, I'm outside of school, you know, I'm in my 30s, I ain't gotta be time to be doing no internships, I need to be paid. Leverage your network. So I have definitely leveraged my network to job shadow people, or either interview people about the day in the life. I realized that like maybe a week of job shadowing or maybe having one conversation with someone may not be enough to like fully evaluate what you want to do. But I think they're just little tools in your toolbox to kind of help to give you insight and have real honest conversation with people about like what's the good, bad, and ugly of what you do, to see if their job seems as appealing as you think it is. Because I always think that we kind of fantasize something
Yeah.
else that's not what we're currently doing. And there's really good and bad in all, right? And so just find someone that is trusted and open, and hopefully someone within your circle can connect them to you to have like real honest conversation about wherever it is you might be interested in doing.
That's great advice. You know, really shadowing, seeing who you can talk to and assess, is this something you're interested in? Does it help leapfrog you into another role? It doesn't always have to be an MBA. I did one. I worked for 4 years and then was able to do a full-time MBA, because for me, I felt that's what was needed. But there are so many different paths. So I love that we could also expose people here to, you don't always have to have that traditional route. And these other routes are also valuable, worthy, can get you in the right places. Not everyone has the resource for an MBA, and so for some people it's not as meaningful. So I think, you know, to Jasmin's point, it's so great to first do your investigation. Even if you're going to ultimately do the schooling, do your investigation on what are you going to get out of this, and is that what that program is going to get for you.
Yeah, I would say one other thing is side hustles are real, and there's so many people who want capable people, and because they don't have the maybe the budget to hire the full experience. So I know a lot of people who are getting some experience into areas in which they have interest in, because a lot of brands and organizations are looking for capable people. So for example, there was a young marketer who had only ever done kind of traditional marketing, who was looking to get more experience in digital marketing. And she was like, look, I'm willing to work for you for like 3 months, just because, and I would love to work on your digital stuff. Transparently, I don't have no background in digital, but I'd love to help with like email marketing. I help to love like you set up some ads. And at the point of my, starting my business, I was like 6 months in. I'm like, great, because I don't have a real budget to hire a like full digital marketer or growth marketer. And so it was mutually beneficial for us to work together. She got to see behind the cover what it was like trying to set up email marketing strategies and paid Facebook strategies for for a small brand. And I also got to have someone who was able to kind of help work on my business and help take off one of the thousands of hats that I had early on. And so and she did all of this while also having a full job. And I also had a full-time job. And so I would think about like, I mean, I know that doesn't work. Like if you want to be a lawyer, you just can't be like, yo, I'm about to be like your legal assistant. But there might be, ways for you to side hustle it and work with emerging brands who are looking for capable people who may not have the experience.
Yep. And I love that you shared that same example, because that young lady was ambitious, coming to you saying, can I do this? Yep. Right. Creating the opportunity for herself. And all you could say is either no, or actually that could work for both of us. Right. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it did work out, and she was able to learn on the job. And probably that real-time experience really created so much more of a fertile soil for her to learn and to see exactly what's happening. She could go to another organization in future and have a great background and understanding of what does it take. And now she would have different resources, not necessarily just more, but also different, so that she has a point of reference to perform well at that role. So yeah, mm-hmm. Jasmin is saying, don't discount the internships, whether paid, unpaid, find ways that there's mutual value. And if you're looking for those skills, that's important. You also, as part of that origin story, you saw that opportunity, you created Be Rooted, but it wasn't as easy as that. So talk to us about what was ultimately the origins of this brand. You saw the opportunity, and then what did you do?
Oh God, I'm so terrible at answering this question, just because when you're so head down, you're like just figuring it out. But it started off with, I was very clear in the beginning of who I wanted to serve. Yeah. And so then it was like, where is the vision of the brand of where you want to be in like 5 to 10 years? And then it's like, Okay, girl. So this is how much money you have. So what do how do you take that big grandiose idea and where
Yeah.
do you want to start? And so I
Mhm.
always saw, Be Rooted as a lifestyle and gifting brand, but I knew I didn't have the capital up front to kind of really source all those different products and be able to sustain that. And
Yeah.
so when I thought about product types that I wanted to focus on, I wanted to first launch with journals because I thought that journals are an amazing accessible way for self-care. And I'm all about like leveraging journals to really kind of help slowing myself down
Mhm.
and writing out my thoughts. And then secondarily, when it came to sourcing products, sourcing paper goods were a little bit easier
Mm.
and better for me to navigate as I was getting my feet wet and how to even source products because I had never done that before. Um, so from there, it was just kind of really thinking through like, okay, I got my product type. I understand my overall brand strategy and where I want to be. What are some of those initial things that are must for this to be or a minimal viable product for us to kind of get this launched? And for me, that was having a website for people to come find us,
Yeah.
um, building up a social so that people could understand who we are and what we believed in,
Mhm.
and then having high quality products that people would love. And then knowing how to ship efficiently, right? Because nobody want to wait months for this stuff to come in. And so those were the boxes that I needed to tick very early on. And I had created some like proof points that if this happened or if we reach to this point, then I can go back and reinvest into some of those other areas that are more sexy and make the brand, more viable for the future. But you have to start somewhere. I think a lot of people don't even know I actually launched Be Rooted without a logo.
I've heard that
And
before in your
I
stories.
did
Yeah.
that because I really wanted my designers to focus their time on making like really beautiful illustrations and really like honing in on the artwork. And I was like, I've seen so many times and I've had other ideas in the past where I've spent all this money up front on the logo and on the website. And then like you realize there's not a good product market fit. And
Mhm.
so I was like, I'm going to focus on the product, kill that. When people tell me they love it, I'll go back and do all the pretty stuff. And once that happened, we sold out after we launched. I went back and then I invested the money.
Developing the logo and all the things. I think that's so smart, really, especially with the product. Like if you're able to really say, this is what they're looking for. And because that white space existed, it didn't matter exactly what the logo was. You could even name it something different later. It was really about, and the proposition here is really about you can see yourself in this journal experience.
Mm-hmm.
And this was something that would resonate more with you. We all, if you're a millennial person, you remember Lisa Frank and these other characters, but this was a way to bring it relevant, bring that journaling habit back to our lives now in a way that is more meaningful and representative. So
Yeah.
I love the proposition. When you think about developing that product, and your main job to be done was really around getting the art and working with a creative. Talk to us about the business side of being able to do that, the checks and balances for when it comes to liability and talent and art living on forever. What did that look like for you in your Be Rooted process?
Yeah. So very early on, I consulted a lawyer who kind of their whole background was like licensing and structuring of partnerships. And I really wanted to, there's multiple ways in which people kind of structure their stationery deals. For some people, your artist are more like collaborations and you're kind of collabing with someone. There's ways in which you're maybe licensing artwork from someone. And then there's some stationery brands where they have designers on their team and they own the artwork outright.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure that no matter what path I wanted to take, because we've done some partnerships, but we've also, have designs underneath the Be Rooted name that we own 100%. I wanted to make sure that we were set up contractually in the right way to make sure that we were being honest to ourselves and also upfront and honest to the designers that work with us. But more importantly, it's more so about like really working with designers that are of the community. They
Yeah.
understand the community. And so when I'm talking about and kind of trying to art direct, the vision that I have in my head, they get it because they know the guests that we're speaking to.
Yeah.
And so that's been like the number one focus, is building out a really representative creative team that I work with, which has been, I think, really the missing pillar in this industry. And even if they were a part of the industry, they maybe didn't have a voice to really kind of make sure that they were heard at the table. And so I like to make sure that my designers have, the ability to lend their opinions and ideas into the vision as well.
Yeah. So when you first started, what vision did you have? You're like, I'm just going to do journals and going to see how that goes. We know that was important for you to have this proof of concept, and you had these thresholds. What's kind of like some of the furthest extents you're like, this could be, what was that at the time?
Yeah, so it really kind of started off as this dream to be like a full like lifestyle brand. So it could be apparel, it could also have, there could be tech pieces of it, there could be paper good pieces of it. And so the world is still kind of its oyster on that piece, but really where I've kind of centered around is that we are a stationery and gifting brand. So really want to be a brand in those key holiday moments when you're looking to find a gift for the loved one in your life, that we're able to have very beautiful, inclusively designed gifting solutions for you.
Yeah, we love that. And I think that also speaks to, although the world is your oyster, you still had to narrow it down. You still had to boil it down to, what are we doing now? And then we could do these things next and later, because if we're associated with something specific now, we could win on these fronts, stationery and gifting. There would be so many more opportunities later.
Absolutely. You can't go after everything at one time.
You can't go.
No way to do it all well.
No, I believe in another interview, I heard you say that when you got your first set of journals, you were storing them, I think, in your mother's garage or in your apartment. Talk to me about those early days and what that looked like versus now, the operational logistics part of things. Because this is the part that most people, we glamorize have the business, have the great imagery and everything. And then there's the other part of you're probably like lifting boxes and doing the grunt work, essentially. What did that look like?
I mean, there's still very much so a piece of that's true. So I just went full time on the business at the beginning of this year, and I actually like sold my house, quit my job, and moved in with my parents so that
all in
and be rooted full time. And I mean, you see this brand that's at retail and is at Target, and obviously there's a much more operationally sound logistics piece of that gets our products to those Target stores. But from a website capacity, like, we're still very much so a small family run business. Like, my parents are downstairs right now packing up boxes for us to send somewhere. We still do get our delivery sent to the house every day. We're packing the orders from my parents' house because operationally and financially, it just makes more sense to kind of keep it at home for now.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I have so many amazing founder friends who have huge warehouses, and they have a whole team of staff that are like working out of their warehouse. And like, that's the dream one day, right?
That will happen one day.
Have that, but right now we're still small and scrappy.
Yeah. And I think that's beautiful, right? Savoring these times when your hands are on it and you can touch and feel, and you're putting in that sweat equity, right? There's always this period of your business where you're really putting in the sweat equity, and that's where you are. But we all know there's days going to come where you're putting in a different sweat equity.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's funny, like, two small stories is like, literally this morning when it was time to send out the packages, we're all carrying boxes down the stairs to like get them ready to go out today. And then my mom is so amazingly, fantastically particular about how each product is packaged in the box. And anytime me and my dad do an order, she's like, oh, you're not doing it right. Like, you're not making sure that this is perfect. And I'm like, you realize there's going to be a point in which none of us are going to do this, and it's going to go to a third party, and we're going to have no idea how they're
right.
But while it's in our hands, we're going to do it right.
Oh,
and so, I do really cherish
Mom,
of like, if everything's laid perfectly and packed perfectly. And I think that my customers, I've read in comments, also appreciate that. They're like, everything gets here so fast and it's packed so nice.
Yeah. So is your mom retired and helping?
Yes, both of my parents are
Wow.
retired and helping, and it's been really fun to like have them be a part of this like next journey in my life, which has become kind of their next journey in their life too.
Yeah, yeah. What was that process like to get them to be a part of your work? Did you have to sit them down and say, hey, I really need help? Or did you first think you were going to do all of it yourself and then you sort of exhausted your time? How did you get them involved?
No, they've been in it from the beginning. I started ideating on this brand in the beginning of 2020. And at that time, I had came down to Georgia to like stay with my parents for 2 weeks, right? Because we all thought the pandemic was going to only be 2 weeks. And we are like, during the pandemic, we're going to, do it together. So I came down here at that time. So they've been here from the beginning of like ideation of me getting my first round of samples to like, everything. And so there wasn't really a moment of me needing to sit them down and have a discussion because they're really a part of it from literally like the ideation point, and were so available and helpful and like and happy to lend their time, that it's probably more so on the back end when it's time to like pull out. That will probably be a harder piece, because they've been so supportive from like day one.
Yeah, no,
We
that's
still
so
have,
great.
we were going to launch coffee mugs at one point, and we got a whole box of these coffee mugs and they look terrible, but they're still all in my parents' like cabinet.
Oh my
I
goodness.
drink coffee out of them. Yeah.
Yes. The failed project, right?
Yeah.
The tested one. So I'm curious, what has being a buyer taught you that's still helpful in your business? And what parts of being a buyer do you have to forget in order to be a small business?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I would say being a buyer helps me understand like what questions to ask. So, what's your category margin look like? What are their sales expectations? What are some levers that we can pull from a marketing standpoint? So I would say I know the right questions to ask, but one thing that I have to not know is assuming what I do know is accurate for the moment that I'm in right now. And what I mean by that is every category has different expectations. Every category, like what's true for beauty is not true for food, and what's true for food is not. And so I've come into this with like lots of experience, right? But it's not in the category in which I'm doing business in currently. And so there's things that I need to continue to check myself on, of like ask the question and don't just assume, because assuming may leave you like doing way more than you really need to be doing, or not considering the right factors. And so I've really been trying to just lean in on like, Jasmin, what the right questions to ask those questions, and just really just forget about all the other things in retail that you think you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's a challenge, right? Because you were sitting in that seat, but this is your chance to be an entrepreneur and new, and there still are things for you to learn. Although sometimes people also assume you know everything too. They're like, yo, you probably know all this already. You're like, no, I actually don't. Tell me.
Actually don't. Like, if you could tell me, that would be great. Oh, don't you know? Mm-mm.
I don't know. You're like, treat me like I'm new, please.
Yes. Because
Yeah.
I am. I'm totally new to this category. I'm totally new to the dynamics of it. And I've learned it's so different than any of the other categories I've worked in.
Yeah. So talk to us about how Target as a retailer came about. You worked there and now you decided to sell your product there. I know there's that affinity there. You're like, yeah, I love the place that I was working because of what I saw it do to consumers or the experience they have there. Talk to me about sort of how that retail connection came to be, and why you chose them as a retailer to stand behind, aside of your, aside from your association as an associate, but just as a retailer, what you thought that they could provide for the Be Rooted consumer.
Yeah, it's funny that you asked this question, because I was actually very like afraid of retail. At the point in which I got approached by retailers, it was in like July or August of 2020. So we were like 2 or 3 months post launching. And I had a couple of different retailers reach out, just interested in having exploratory conversations. And at that time, I was like, I am 3 months old of a brand. I am not trying to talk to any retail is expensive. Retail is scary. You have to be able to scale.
And this is the buyer talking.
Like failure rates are so high, all of the things that, again, like all of the things I have to know, I have to tell myself, like, you don't know these things. I was like, And my mentor was like, girl, you don't take these calls.
Yes.
Because I was talking myself, out of, being ready. And one of my biggest lessons is that, like, you're never going to be ready, but you have to but that you have the grit and determination to figure it out in spite of. And I was having these conversations with a couple of different retailers, and Target being one. And when I really sat myself down and like remembered why I was doing this, it was because I wanted to make sure that women of color grew up having access to products that were representative of themselves. And the best way to expose them to what I was doing and to what I believed in was doing it on the mass scale. And because, I could, even if I built my business within, the first year, I had the wildest dreams, from a marketing standpoint on my website, I would still be talking to this size of an audience, but expanding my reach to the thousands and millions of people that walk through, Target stores on a yearly basis, that would be able to expand my reach and have a bigger impact. And so that was one of the considerations for them. The second consideration is that, the buyer really talked to me about the work and the journey that they were doing beyond just beauty and to other areas within the store, and how focused they were on like getting it right, and understanding that it was a journey. And that was one of the pieces that was really making me nervous, just because I've seen in general where, people go after something that's important right now and they want instant success. But I really wanted to have a retail partner that was very clear about the fact that it takes time to build with this consumer. And that was one piece that I really learned when I was building multicultural beauty, is that you can't go and not talk to this consumer for decades and then put one product out there and expect them to find it, because guess what? They've now taken you off of their consideration set. They now think that I can no longer find X, Y, and Z at this retailer, or I go to this other retailer. And so Target's been an amazing partner on this journey of just really being, thoughtful behind how they are working with and partnering with brands that are talking to our community.
Yeah, I have an interesting vantage because like you, I've worked in food. Currently, I work in beauty. I'm a marketing director for multicultural beauty at L'Oreal. And so now being able to see going from food, going from sports nutrition, working for a retailer, food retailer, a grocery retailer, Wakefern in the Northeast, and now being back on the brand side in beauty, specifically in multicultural beauty, I love the learnings I've captured across the years. And really, that is one of the big points. You have to talk to this consumer a little bit differently. Yeah. And they want to be spoken to. They want to be engaged. They're actually highly engaged, but you have to find them and build those relationships, because we kind of have to, and Target now is doing such a great job. They've been doing a great job more consistently over the years, creating more of this mass accumulation of us. Now, I think most of us now expect Target to have more things in beauty. These are the categories, especially the one you're in, stationery. That's one of the categories that still, it's deepening your portfolio, so there's more for us to come there for, or inviting others that have a complementary product. There are
these others. Invite any others. I'm just
like,
I'm totally just playing. I'm actually a big believer.
Be rooted is here to stay rooted. Okay.
No, I'm actually a big believer in like building up the category together, especially as you said, with complementary brands that invite a different aesthetic and appeal to different pieces of the audience to really build out that landscape. And I think, as you know from being in marketing, the more that you can really create kind of the statement moment and help draw people to the aisles,
Yeah.
the better it is for everyone. So I was being a little like,
I know.
one side is like, no, we don't need no others, but truly though, we really do need.
We do.
Everyone benefits from all rise, kind of all ties rising together.
Yeah, we want people to stay into that same self-care realm you've created, find things that complement across the store that just adds to the experience you have there. But we love that Be Rooted was the first there, or amongst the first there. And you've seen that energy, especially in 20, you launched, and then not great, but something great that came out of it was this whole drive for Black owned in 2020, and you being able to at the launch have this amazing energy working in your favor, totally as a tailwind, right? Talk to us about the Be Rooted experience and your personal experience. You launched, 2020 came, that was July, so that was amidst the pandemic. Talk to us about what you then experienced on your end.
Yeah, I mean, what a great year to launch a brand. In some ways, there was tailwinds and headwinds. So, I had this dream in January. My goal was to launch by June. You had George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement take place in the summer, I believe July. And dealing with that with my corporate hat on and my day job and all of that impact there, dealing with those emotional feelings, because I have ties to Minneapolis and like lots of friends who are like living what that energy feels like every day, while also juxtaposing this against these corporate initiatives of, buy Black or support Black. As an entrepreneur and a Black entrepreneur, it was a great time for exposure.
Yeah.
And the seeking of people within our community to support our community, but then also the leveraging of press also seeking out brands to support and uplift. Mm-hmm. And so it was a great tailwind on what also felt like a very heavy moment.
It was heavy.
So it was just like kind of weirdness on top of us being in a pandemic. Mm-hmm. On top of, just launching a brand that's about kind of self-care in the mix of like probably one of the craziest mental health crises that we've had as a collective, United States in a very long time.
World, even for that matter, right?
Yeah, world. Very much. So it was just like there was so many moments of like this was perfect timing, mm-hmm. but also like don't love saying that because it was just a heavy moment, and so I do have like very mixed feelings. I think that and then to have a brand that's thriving and growing and getting all these opportunities, while there's also lots of brands and businesses shuttering because business is slow and people can't work, and it was just like a weird time. So I'm very looking forward to a moment when we could say like now that we're out of the pandemic.
yeah And how did you manage your creativity during that time? You're launching, you didn't really get a time to breathe, really. You're having to navigate the issues personally while also being, front and center for the opportunities that were coming and trying to put on your best face. How did you live into the Be Rooted mantra and mission of creating or inspiring self-care, reflection, all of these things? What was your practice during that time?
Yeah, it took a back seat. I mean, I was doing a full 9 to 5 while also trying to grow my 5 to 9. And it was a hustle, but I was very much so of the mindset that this is for a time period and that I cannot operate on this level of grind I didn't know what the time period was, but I knew that I had to be open and honest with myself that at the time in which I got to that point, I needed to make decisions. And so, it was an exhilarating time though, because we had so much great momentum going on. And one thing that I, tell people, they're like, how did you do it all? I'm like, well, first off, we were in a pandemic, so I wasn't going nowhere. So all of this free time was like, okay, so what do I do with it? And I was able to pour it into my business in a time frame where I would have never had the opportunity in the past if the world was open. I'm normally traveling so much for work, having personal trips, connecting with friends. But when all of that was stripped away, I was kind of left with this huge void of time. And honestly, it was almost like a self care practice to have something to do with that time, because I know a lot of friends like myself who are normally busybodies who, when they were in this moment of like, well, there's not anything to do, were kind of having their own mental health journey that they're having to navigate because they didn't have anything to pour their energy into. And so I was really thankful to kind of have be rooted as a way for me to really be able to invest this kind of pent up energy that I would normally be doing into other things, into myself and into the brand I wanted to build.
Yeah. And so you told us kind of at the top that you've since gone full-time in the business as of January 2022, which we're so excited for you. We just know that in and of itself is a milestone, right? And you had that option to stay in corporate. You stayed for a good long time to really make sure you had your ducks in a row as much as you could, and to steward over what you were doing. Just for the Black on Shelf community, talk to us about kind of what went into that decision, whether you felt prepared or not, and sort of what variables you were thinking about to make that decision for yourself, coupled with any advice you would give for frameworks or ways they should think about prioritizing that decision, or thinking through that decision on when is it time, how do I know, what was important to you when you made it, just helping us understand how you were thinking so we can have some frameworks to think about it for ourselves.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, when I was like, what are the things that are going to need to be true for you to be able to go full time? I came up with the sales goal. Like, if I get to this sales goal, to me, that will be a proof point. So I got to that sales goal and that wasn't enough. Then I said, okay, well, if I get this opportunity, this will be the proof point that will tell me that I'm ready, because that's deemed me at whatever level of success made me feel like I was confident enough to go out on my own. And I hit that. And to me, it still wasn't enough. And I'm sharing this to say that you can build the frameworks. You can say, I need to have this much money in my pocket. I need to have, this much sales that have happened. I need to have this. I need to have that. I need to have this. I need to have that. But if you don't have the courage in your soul to be ready to make that leap, all of those frameworks that you put in place are going to mean nothing. Because I did it. I had all of these things that I told myself once I checked these boxes. And it was really just having to have an honest conversation with myself about, like, why are you still stalling? And I had a coffee with a mentor, and she said, look, Jazz, there's going to be a point in which I kept telling people, I'll make a decision when I have to make a decision. And she kept saying, she said, Jasmine, there's going to be a point in which by you making no decision, you're going to be making the worst decision. And she's like, with all that you have going on, have you actually even had a chance to really think about what the future is going to look like for you? Right. And when I thought about that, I was like, well, no, like, I'm just running
mile a minute, right?
And really, it was like, I know imposter syndrome is like a very real term, but also like slightly overused. But it was really the reason why I couldn't go. I probably should have gone full time 6 months before I decided to make it. But it was really about like me not being ready.
Or not being
ready to have the courage to believe in myself full. And by always having this job, it was the safety net. And if Be Rooted didn't succeed, it was like, oh, it was just something that I was doing. Like, it was my side, thing. And there's a lot of courage in stepping out full time and being like, no, I'm 100% committed to this. And I had to have those real conversations with myself in the quiet of the night to get to that point. Yeah. And so, I'm happy to, and I will be on my Instagram, like sharing things that I thought through. But honestly, none of those frameworks mean a thing if you don't have the courage to actually do it, because there's people who leave way before any of these things happen. It's because they have the gumption that they believe in themselves and they know that no matter what, they're going to make it work.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. And it does really speak to that the paths are different, but what has to be strong is a certain mindset, right? This vision, this belief, this mindset that has to be locked in, because in some ways, for the people that aren't actually fully ducks in a row, that mindset does help them make it all happen. After the fact, right? They have that fuel to go off of after the fact. And for those that could align preparation with mindset, it's even better. It's even better transition, but it's always going to be a leap of faith. That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So now that you have gone full time and you have this clearer opportunity to think about the vision, the next frontier for the brand, how you stored over the business, what has that free time enabled you to do that you couldn't do when you were running a mile a minute in that first launch year, getting everything done and just doing what had to be done right now to move forward? How has this space sort of created a little bit of a reset for you to see Be Rooted through?
Yeah, so it's been really awesome because I feel like God has rewarded me since I've gone full time. There's been so many opportunities that happened literally in the last 3 weeks where I was like, when will I have had time to figure out how to do this? Like, when was I going to have time to get on the plane to go X, Y, and Z? And so, so that's been like just a blessing that I haven't been able to turn down anything or say no to any opportunities. I actually have the time to figure out how to execute it. But on top of that, two things I'm really excited about is I'm really focusing in on deepening our relationship with our community, and really thoughtfully thinking about both virtual and in real life experiences that we can do to really deepen and strengthen our relationship with our community. So I'm so excited about like putting together more of that community aspect into the brand. And then I would say the second piece is really being able to build out a team. I've always been so afraid to kind of fully build out the team exactly where I needed it to be, because when you have two jobs, how am I going to also train, develop, coach, monitor, check in, all of that with people who are going to need all of that from me when I have very limited time to even do the things that I'm doing, right? And so to take the brand to the next level, it takes me removing off various hats and bringing on the right experience people to kind of take it to the next space. But it requires me to be fully in before I want someone else to be fully in. And so I'm excited about kind of building out my team and then strengthening our relationship with our community this year.
Oh, that's amazing. And we can't wait to be a part of building that community and supporting it and engaging, like being able to hop in in and of ourselves. That's going to be such a great experience. Because I think one thing we all have gotten out of the past few years is really that importance of self-care, the importance of being connected with ourselves and with community. So for brands that are recognizing that and helping us create those opportunities that we were missing and craving, those are the ones that are going to be successful right now as well.
Yeah, I think it's so important to not just sell stuff and to really think about how you're engaging with, talking to, and creating experiences and providing value for the community that you serve.
Yeah. So in terms of milestones, talk to us about what it looks like on the funding front to get a business off the ground within a year, and honestly less than that. And I know all businesses vary. We've shared a number of different entrepreneurs and their process, but for a brand like Be Rooted, talk to us about what some of those funding requirements or milestones really looks like for you.
Yeah, so for me, I have fully bootstrapped this business myself, and I always say like you have to work with the budget that you have. And so I was thankful enough to have a fair amount of money kind of in savings that I decided that I was going to utilize to set up my business. But with doing that, I was so, like I said, so scrappy early on, like very much so being very judicial about how every single dollar was spent. And so I know that this feels really like simple, but two kind of filters that I really put things through was like, is this a nice to have or a necessity? And those very early on stages, we were only doing necessities. Like we were only buying and spending money on the necessities until we were able to kind of get some of those big orders in and get that money back that we could kind of reinvest into the business, because everything was about making that target partnership a success in the beginning, and having what we needed to make that work. And then having a really solid foundation in creating a budget and having a cash flow statement that really helped me understand like what were going to be my inflows and my outflows of all the necessities. I think a lot of people early on are kind of just spending without a plan, and then run into situations where they're like they've run out of cash. And I'm not going to say that there weren't moments that I didn't almost get there, but when you have a cash flow statement, you're not surprised by the fact that you're going to almost run out of cash.
You anticipate it in a way.
Yeah, that's the key piece, because then you can maybe pivot some of your strategies and where you're in some of your levers so that you don't. And if you don't, I did not know any of this stuff prior to kind of working for a small brand. I got more insight from working for a small brand and kind of being one of five on the leadership team. And my background in Target didn't prepare me, because you're working for a big brand with big budgets. I was never concerned about money in that regard. So if this is not a skill set that you have, I definitely went to Barnes and Nobles and bought business books to strengthen my knowledge on what I had a preview to at working for a small brand, but I wasn't an accountant, so I didn't know the intimate details. And then there's things out there called fractional CFOs. So there's CFOs that you can hire to kind of work with you on a project basis. And so I definitely recommend that if you have the money to hire a consultant, that your ops and your finances are all, I know everyone hires marketing because that's the sexy piece, and I get it. Like I'm
always gonna have a job.
But ops and finance is what keeps the foundation of your business going. Because if you only invest in marketing, if you ain't got the product to sell, and if you ain't got the cash to support it, you're going to be driving all of these people to an empty website or to an empty store, or whatever it looks like for you. And I would say using a fractional CFO to kind of help you get your books in place up front is really, really, really critical if you don't already have that skill set, either yourself or someone else in house.
Yeah, for the boss fund, that's great. That's a great advice there. Another word that it's called is like a virtual CFO. Some people call it virtual CFO fractional, but that's basically you can't know everything. And so sometimes it's worth it to spend a little on someone that does, so you avoid some costly mistakes, or you could learn the pieces that you can do, but really setting it up and putting someone who really knows what they're doing in charge of that, giving you the visibility you wouldn't have. Because even if you go to business school, you're not going to learn that. You're going to have a specific skill set. There are going to be pieces of running the business that you won't know. You're going to have to collaborate. Most businesses aren't run by one person. And even when they are, as Jasmin is showing us, she still have to supplement and bring somebody in. And now that the business is at another stage, she is thinking about, how do I build out this team? Who do I bring to really complement my skills and get the job done? It didn't happen day one. It doesn't have to. But you have to have that visibility and that foresight to say, I know I'm gonna need it. I'm gonna do this right now and get by, and I'm gonna do this to supplement, and then I'll be able to supply completely, right? At a time when your business really needs it. Yeah. Would you add anything else from an advice standpoint to kind of knowing when to pull those triggers, or how to have some checks and balances so that you don't go overboard? I've heard stories of people saying, I hired too many people at the very beginning and that cash flow statement wasn't there. And so, you kind of have to layer it, kind of take the layers down, because it's like, this is not profitable. And maybe they're not prepared to lead that many people all at once. Maybe the business actually didn't need it at that time. How did you think about layering people in over time and supplementing and supplementing the way you needed to do it?
Yeah, so I read this white paper by, I believe she was the ex chief like human resources officer for Netflix. And someone had kind of forwarded it to me kind of very early on, but she had this approach to hiring that's all about hiring for a job and not hiring for a career. So many of us who worked in corporate, we're very much so like thinkers about like, okay, like I need this person that's going to be, you know, this type of person for this type of role. And this is what that pathway is going to look like. They're going to start off doing this and they're going to do this. And then a year later, that role is going to look like this. And you're like, we're always like thinking about like the bigger picture. And when she talked about helping build up Netflix, it was more about what are the positions or the functions that I need done in the next 3 to 6 months. Mm. And literally just writing a job description for that 3 to 6, for the next upcoming 3 to 6 months, like not thinking about what that role is going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now, like only literally thinking about what you need right now. And so kind of every 13 weeks, I try to think about like, what are the things that I have an immediate need for? Who do I need to help me fill that seat? And of course, you want all of these people to be people that grow with you and are a part of your, you know, your company for a long time. But the reality is that some of them, it makes sense for just that job. And sometimes it does make sense for it to turn into a full-time career for both of y'all. But you have to really think about like, what are the jobs that need to be done as a small business that's growing rapidly? That stuff changes all the time.
Yeah. Nike can plan to say, I'm going to get this person and we're going to keep them within the portfolio for as many years as they want to be here because they're of that scale. There's so many different roles for them. They can always put someone someplace, but as a small business, we don't have that luxury or those dollars all the time, to your point.
And someone's already done the work for Nike to tell them what job.
And someone's already done that.
And
so they've have a different job.
50 years on, you know, underneath their wing to figure out. And even big companies are, you know, are always ebbing and flowing kind of what the job titles and structures are.
That too. But restructurings happen. Yep.
An example is in 2020, I think I changed my website twice. I had no need to change or add additional pages. Like the pages that were on my website were the pages on my website. This year, because of all the initiatives that we have coming up and the things that we're trying to drive and whatever, we have new needs for landing pages almost every month. So before I had a kind of more, you know, contractual relationship with a web developer, it was like, I only need you like twice a year. Now I need someone who I can continue to have an ongoing relationship with that knows my website and is able to tweak it as it needs be each month as we're evolving and adding on new, you know, pages that we're driving people to. And so like that job to be done literally was not true 2 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I love the vision you're painting here. It's about agility. It's about being iterative in your approach at this size and not only looking at the big. You can get inspiration. You read a white paper from someone who was working for a large company, but she was talking about the experience of growing it. So when it wasn't the Netflix we know it as, she was using that same strategy, which is working for you. Yeah, I think it really speaks to being able to draw from the experiences that serve you and that are relevant for your stage, and not taking all advice, not taking all systems. Sometimes those systems that someone else may have might be too complex for the simplicity of your new business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also as a founder or, you know, owner of your business, it's what was good enough for you to do it on your own at the stage that you were at, and what are things that you just no longer should be touching it because you're going to mess it up. And there's just lots of those real moments that, you know, you have to have with yourself. Like, you know, what's your payment process looking like? How do you deal with invoicing people? How do you deal with paying people? Is the way that you were doing it when you had 5 or 6 contractors the same as the way that you need to do it when you have employees? That may look different.
Right.
And so it just kind of, you have to be honest with yourself, because if you're out here lying to yourself about your needs, that's when, and I think a lot of people actually do, they just don't have those honest conversations with themselves about what are my current needs right now and how do I fill them.
Yeah. So you've learned a lot in this time, and I love that your background helps inform some of it, but you're still so open to learning and flowing to serve Be Rooted and the stage that it's at right now. Any other milestones you would say are just important to you, or ones that you really cherish?
Ooh. I mean, I will never forget the day that we launched at Target. To me, that was such a special milestone. But I would say the real proof point, and I've said this in like every interview because it's so true, is very early on, I still read all of my reviews and I appreciate every last single one of them.
Write reviews for Jasmin.
But very early on, I got a review from a father who bought some journals for his daughters. And he talked about watching them open up the box when it came in and seeing their eyes light up by seeing people that look like them on the product. And that really was like my why. And I think that like there will hopefully be some other kind of big moments that happen for the brand that will be really, really cool. But that will always be the one review that will kind of stick with me. That reminds me of like why I'm doing what I'm doing. And like when the days are hard or the million failures that I'll have, because every day as an entrepreneur, you are learning something that you didn't know the day before. Like I kind of always recenter myself on that moment.
That one was so special. And I'm sure at that time, that was the reinforcement that really could help move the needle on the next day, right? Like, yes, I'm doing this for a reason. I'm tired right now. Maybe, you know, the 9 to 5 is turning into the 5 to 9 is turning into a 5 to 2 a.m., you know? And so hearing things like that, it's like, I'm doing it for a reason though. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you talked to us a little bit about the next frontier. Anything additional there? I know we can continue to expect more on the lifestyle and stationery. Talk to us about what we could expect in 2022.
Yeah, so we just launched 2 new journals at Target for Black History Month that we're so excited about. You know, retailers don't love for you to share too much of what's coming there. Right. But you know, just keep your eyes open over the next couple of months. And hopefully there'll be more exciting news to share on that front. But no, really, as we get into the rest of this year, it's broadening our assortment beyond just journals, really cementing ourselves as a full kind of gifting solution, and really being centered on our consumer and finding ways to meaningfully connect with her in various different ways. And so that's the roadmap of our plan for this year, which with all of my ideas I have will be a tall task for us to execute, but that's what we're focused on. And you know, when you work in retail, you live in multiple different years. So we're already planning for 2023, which is insane to think about, because we literally just entered 2022. And so it's also just like thinking about like what's the new frontier going to look like from a design standpoint, where do we want to be, and you know, what do we want to showcase for 2023.
I'm so excited. Well, I haven't seen a Be Rooted anything that I haven't loved, so we know we could expect aesthetic to always be on point, the feels to always be strong, and just for that engagement piece, as you mentioned, is going to become a focus to really look out for that and support what Jasmin is building, because it's for us, you know, it is for us. So that's thank you for seeing us and really deciding to amplify that part of the business so that you can really grow that community that cares about self-care, that cares about reflection, that cares about community. So we've been talking about tons of lessons and advice throughout this whole time. So I'm super happy about that. If there's anything else that you think is important to share, perhaps from someone in year one, just because you've not been too far out of that, this is a good time for you to be able to capture any words you have on what a year one might look like, what might help someone push forward. What would you say to anyone in the Boss Fam who's in year one? What encouragement could you give to them during this time?
Yeah, it's really two things. Someone really early on to me said, if you ever have the chance to bet on yourself, take it every single time. And that is so, so true. And then I would say the second thing that I would tell someone very early on is, like, if you're waiting for that moment in which you're going to feel like you're ready, like, you're literally never going to feel ready. You're never going to have all the time. You're never going to have all the resources. You're never going to have all the money. You're never going to have all the answers, but you're going to still do it anyways. Because if you're determined and if you have that grit, you're going to figure it out regardless. And so please don't sit there and wait for the moment when you're ready. Because guess what? Even when you feel ready, something's going to happen that's going to remind you that you ain't ready. So, but if you're passionate and if you're walking in your purpose, or if you're leading with passion, you're not going to make a mistake because you're doing something that you were designed to do and that only you were uniquely placed on this earth to be a part of and to execute.
Preach. Yes, we needed that. We needed that. Thank you. So I would love to know, for you, you've reached a lot of milestones in your career, in business, in your life in general. What does this one mean, right? So thinking about this product having this expansion this year that you know is coming, what's the significance of you being Black on Shelf?
Yeah, this year is about freedom. I've always lived my life helping other people execute their dreams or helping push for someone else's agenda. And this is really my time to sit back and think, like, what does life look like for Jasmin doing the things that I care about? You know, what entrepreneurship to me really unlocks the freedom for me to design a life that I want to live. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people think about the money, or they think about like their exit plan. And, you know, everyone gets motivated by different things. But for me, I've always lived somewhere because a job told me that's where they wanted me to live. Where do I want to live? My day has always started at, 8 or 9 p.m. because that's the time that someone told me I needed to be up to and be on their clock. What time do I want to start my job? Working out and doing the things that make me feel good has always been me trying to fit it in or sneak it into someone else's schedule. How do I integrate those self-care practices into my daily schedule to be a part of my routine based off of what makes sense for me? And so I am just so excited to continue to have these honest conversations about what's the life that I'm designing myself to live.
Yeah.
And what does that look like for me? And what freedom and what power does that unlock for myself? And those are conversations that I've yet to really been able to delve into because I'm only 3 weeks into being out from kind of walking someone else's path.
Yeah. Yeah. Freedom, that's such a big one. Being able to be Black on Shelf does enable that freedom and does create that vision for, oh my gosh, I can decide what this looks like. I can create my own path. I love that. Where can everybody follow Be Rooted?
So we are at Be Rooted Co. on all channels, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook primarily. And we would love your support. Please follow us. And if you have already followed the brand and you're like, girl, we love Be Rooted, we're already a supporter. Reviews are king. So if you love us, if you bought us from Target or if you bought us on our website, please, please, please take the time to leave a review, especially if you bought from Target. It's one of the main factors that retailers look to understand if the community likes what you're doing. So beyond just the sales numbers, it's another proof point to kind of give them a nod that these are the types of items that the consumers are looking for, whether it be for my brand or for, as we were talking about, opening the doors for other brands to be in that space. And so I would so appreciate if you took the time to do that.
Absolutely. Well, you guys heard it. We're going to support Jasmin by leaving a review. That's going to help the business greatly. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you
We're
so
so
much for
happy to have
having
you.
me. This
Of
has been
course.
so cool. I felt like I was just chatting with a friend. This has been one of my favorite podcasts to be on.
This is my sorority sister. So, we sometimes it's that instant friendship.
Yeah,
that
you
instant
be like, you get them spotty senses and it just feels like
yeah, it's great.